important function of the HR, that is in IHRM in MNCs, because if an expatriate need to be motivated, the important criteria for keeping their motivation or keeping their interest is through the compensation. Any monetary or non-monetary benefits, rewards, then the pay, all these forms an integral part of their role and the assignment. So that is why this function is very important, and this is the compensation practices of an expatriate is different from that of the domestic HRM. So let us see how it varies. So before framing the compensation of the international employees, that is the expatriates, the HR or the firm need to look into various aspects, that is about the nationality of ownership of the subsidiary, then international human resource management approach, M&E prior experience in industrial relations, then subsidiary characteristics like this. Means many the international law, that is employment related regulations, standards, and labor unions, labor classes, all comes into picture. So an information or knowledge about such aspects is very important. Here we, before proceed to the actual designing of the compensation practices, let us understand few concepts about the employment standards in the form of clauses. The first clause is called as labor clauses. It is also called as Labor Clauses Convention, introduced in 1949. It aims at ensuring respect for minimum labor standards in the execution of public contracts. And the second clause is about Protection of Wages Convention, again in 1949, where it highlights about the wages which shall be paid in legal tender at regular intervals. In cases where partial payment of wages is in kind, the value of such allowances should be fair and reasonable. Workers shall be free to dispose of their wages as they choose. In cases of employer insolvency, wages shall enjoy a priority in the distribution of liquidated assets. Means the in order to protect the wages of the labor, such clause has been introduced. So this is to protect their wages. And the third clause is about minimum wage fixing convention, again formed in 1970, which focus on requires ratifying states to establish a minimum wage fixing machinery capable of determining and periodically reviewing and adjusting minimum wage rates having the force of law. And the next clause is about protection of workers' claims, that is Employers Insolvency Convention in 1992, which provides for the protection of wage claims in insolvency and bankruptcy by means of a privilege or through a guarantee institution. That is, in case of such problems like bankruptcy or insolvency, how to protect the compensation of the employees or their employment, so shall be discussed in this class. So these are certain such classes or standards which has been given by labor organization, and we do see the role of ILO also here. So, and with respect to these, there is again a response of labor unions in MNCs. So, such labor unions or trade unions have their response with respect to formidable financial resources, alternative sources of supply, the ability to move production facilities to other countries, and a remote locus of authority. So, these are such few responses that need to be considered while designing the compensation practices, and also the standards that has been given by the guidelines given by the ILO, that also need to be enforced. So based on all these criteria, the designing of international compensation for international assignees will be taken by the HR or by the MNC. Now let us understand how to go with that. That is, designing and developing a better compensation package for HR professionals for the international assignment requires knowledge of taxation, employment laws, and foreign currency fluctuations by the HR professionals. Moreover, the socio-economic conditions of the country have to be taken into consideration while developing a compensation package. It is easy to develop the compensation package for the parent country national, but difficult to manage the host and third country nationals. When a firm develops international compensation policies, it tries to fulfill some broad objectives. So let us discuss what are those objectives about the compensation policy, because the policies should fulfill the objectives of the organization and also should aim at completing the objectives of the employees also. So both we shall discuss now. The objectives like the compensation policy should be in line with the structure, business needs, and overall strategy of the organization. And the second policy is the policy should aim at attracting and retaining the best talent. And the third objective is to it should enhance employee satisfaction. And the fourth one is it should be clear in terms of understanding of the employees and also convenient to policy of the firm. So these are the few objectives that need to be accomplished while designing the composition packages. And the objectives with respect to employees are as follows. The first one is proper compensation against his or her competency and performance level, substantial financial gain for his or her own comfort and for his family also, his or her present and future needs to be taken care of, including children's education, medical protection, and housing facilities. And the policy should be progressive in nature also. These are the few objectives. Now let us discuss the different forms of compensation. There are two forms of compensation provided to employees. One is direct and indirect. The direct forms of compensation have a multitude of types or methods, from salaries to bonuses. Indirect compensation is primarily the various types of benefits and long-term incentives. This article is an introduction to the terminology of compensation. So now let us discuss what are such different monetary and non-monetary forms of compensation. The first form is salary. This type of wage is customarily a set sum of remuneration over a defined period of time. The most traditional form is a dollar amount over a period of 1 year. That is, the frequency of payment is another part of the compensation and is based on industry standards. Most businesses pay for services twice a month. And most commonly used tool to pay professional or licensed employees is, in general, there is an expectation from the employer of longer term commitment from the employee for providing a regular uninterrupted compensation. The second form of compensation is hourly based compensation. This is a dollar amount per hour of service that is by the employee to the employer, more commonly used to compensate unskilled and skilled laborers in the workforce. This form of compensation comes with an implied understanding that during times of slow or minimal workloads, the employee may not be used to provide services. In effect, there is no guarantee of a regular cycle of pay. So that is the drawback in this form. And the next form is commission-based compensation. When compensation is based on volume or some form of performance, this is known as commission-based remuneration. Other terms used include piecework or piecemeal. Many industries use this type of remuneration to get a minimum standard of production in exchange for compensation. So this attracts majority of the employees, and it is used to shift risk from the employer to the employee. There are two methods to calculate this commission. That is, one is based on volume of services and the other is based on sales. And the next one is bonuses. Bonuses are used to increase performance from the employee. So this is a variable type of remuneration and is more commonly found with salaried staff to incentivize them for a particular goal, whether time or volume based. Other reasons used for bonuses are to increase or maintain retention of certain skills or the pool of skill sets needed in the company. Sometimes bonuses are paid when a company meets certain financial standards or goals over an extended period of time. Bonuses are not commonly used with hourly or commission based employees due to the nature of the type of compensation already established. However, in small businesses, it is used as a tool to incentivize these two types of remuneration to meet certain goals. The other form of compensation is indirect in value. This includes benefits and equity based programs. In general, these two types of indirect compensation provide value to an employee over a longer period of time. So, this is about the bonus. And the next form is benefits. This particular group is traditionally thought of in the form of insurances like health, dental, life, disability, and vision, and also retirement. Very few small businesses provide benefits to their employees due to cost involved. That is, when small businesses begin providing benefits, they customarily start out with retirement because of simplicity and low cost. As they grow, they add health insurance and continue to expand the benefit packages as the number of employees increase and the risk of business performance decreases. So this is about the benefits where such benefits allow for retention and recruitment also. That is, this is one form of benefit. The other benefits can include transportation, paid time off, then vacation time, and customized incentives, that is like lodging, meals, phones, etc. And the next form of the compensation is equity based programs, rarely found in the small business world for several reasons. These type of indirect compensation tie the employee to the company via ownership. Due to the complexity and the legal issues involved, very few small businesses use this tool. So these are the few forms of compensation. Now let us understand the different factors that influence compensation policy. When developing international compensation policies, a firm seeks to satisfy several objectives. They are the factors like the first one, the policy should be consistent with the overall strategy, structure, and business needs of the multinational. Second, the policy must work to attract and retain staff in the areas where the multinational has the greatest needs and opportunities. Hence, the policy must be competitive and recognize factors such as incentive for foreign service, tax equalization, and reimbursement for reasonable costs. And the third one is the policy should facilitate and um, transfer of international employees in the most cost effective manner for the firm. And the fourth one is the policy must give due consideration to equity and ease of administration. So these are certain factors that need to be again looked into. And few employee related factors include first, the employee will expect the policy to offer financial protection in terms of benefits, social security, and living costs in the foreign location. And second, the employee will expect a foreign assignment to offer opportunities for financial advancement through income and or savings. Third, the employee will expect issues such as housing, education of children, and recreation to be addressed in the policy. So, by keeping into consideration these factors and forms of compensation and the employment standards and guidelines, different clauses, the MNC can go for framing of the compensation practices. The key components of international compensation includes the first one is base salary, foreign service inducement premium, taxes, benefits, incentives, allowances, and long term benefits. Now, let us understand these one by one. The first one, base salary. So, this term has a highly different meaning in an international context than in a domestic one. In the latter case, it denotes the amount of cash compensation that serves as a benchmark for other compensation elements like bonus, social benefits for the expatriate. For the expatriate, it denotes the main component of package of allowances directly related to the base salary and the basis for in-service benefits and pensions contributions. This base salary actually forms the foundation block of the international compensation. And the second one is foreign service inducement premium. This is a component of the total compensation package given to employees to encourage them to take up foreign assignment. So this is with the aim to compensate them for the possible hardships they may face while being overseas. In this context, the definition of hardship, the eligibility criteria for premium, and the amount and the timing of this payment are to be carefully considered. Such payments are normally made in the form of percentage of the salary and they vary depending upon the tenure and content of the assignment. In addition, sometimes other differentials may be considered. For instance, if a host country uh, work week is longer than that of the home country, a differential payment may be made in lieu of overtime. So these are such few examples that need to be looked into. And the third type of component of compensation is allowances. One of the most common kinds of allowance internationally is the cost of living allowance, shortly called as COLA. It typically involves a payment to compensate for the differences in cost of living between the two countries, resulting in an eventual difference in the expenditure made. A typical example is to compensate for the inflation differential, that is COLA also includes payments for the housing and other utilities and also personal income tax. Other major allowances that are often made are home leave allowance, education allowance, relocation allowance, spouse assistance allowance, like this. The next component is benefits. The aspects of the benefit is often very complicated to deal with. That is, for instance, you take the pension. Pension plans normally differ from country to country due to the difference in national practices. Thus, all these and other benefits like medical coverage, social security are difficult to imitate across countries. Thus, firms need to address a number of issues when considering what benefits to give and how to give them. However, the crucial issue that remains to be dealt with is whether the expatriates should be covered under the home country benefit programs or the ones of the host country. As a matter of fact, most US officials are covered by their home country benefit programs, and the other kinds of benefits that are offered are vacation and special leaves. Rest and rehabilitation leaves, emergency provisions like death or illness in the family, and these benefits, however, depend on the host country regulations. And the next form of component is incentives. Now let us discuss what is how to go with these incentives. In recent years, some MNC have been designing special incentives programs for keeping expatriate motivated. In the process of growing number of firms have dropped the ongoing premium for overseas assignment and replaced it with on-time lump sum premium. The lump sum payment has at least three advantages. That is, first, the expatriate realizes that they are paid this only once, and that too when they accept an overseas assignment. And the next one is, if so, the payment tends to retain its motivational value. And the second one is, cost to the company or less because there is only one payment and no future financial commitment. This is about incentive. And the next component is taxes. The final component of the expatriates compensation relates to taxes. That is, MNCs generally select one of the following approaches to handle international taxation. The first one is tax equalization. The firm withhold an amount equal to the home country tax obligation of the expatriate and pay all taxes in the host country. This is like in one place, in one country, the expatriate can pay the tax. And the next one is tax protection. The employee pays up to the amount of taxes he or she would pay on remuneration in the home country. In such a situation, the employee is entitled to any windfall received if total taxes are less in the foreign country than in the home country. And the next component is long-term benefits or stock benefits. As we know, these are usually offered to the employees, expatriates who are in higher positions. There are employee stock option schemes or stock option plans, restricted stock units, employee stock purchase plan, like that. So these are the components of compensation. Now let us discuss the approaches to international compensation. There are two main options in the area of international compensation. The first one is going rate approach and the second one is balance sheet approach. Here in going rate approach, for example, a Japanese bank operating in New York would need to decide whether its reference point would be the local US salaries or other Japanese competitors in New York or all foreign banks operating in New York. So with the going rate approach, if the location is in a low pay country, then the multinational usually supplements base pay with additional benefits and payments. The basic objective is to keep the expatriate whole, that is, can keep their motivation and that will benefit the maintenance of home country living standards plus the financial increments also. And the next approach is balance sheet approach. An assignment abroad can mean that a US expatriate is taxed both in the country of assignment and in the USA. So this dual tax cost combined with all of the other expatriate costs makes some US multinationals think twice about making use of expatriates. Means it will be an additional investment or burden to the company. So such compensation practices, they vary in different countries. So again, we need to understand how these compensation practices vary in different countries like Japan, USA, UK, Turkey, Middle East, India, and China. In the United States, when we think about employee compensation, we start on the most basic level with an understanding of minimum wage laws, that is, contractual bonus programs and vacation policies outside the US. Even these very basic compensation concepts have different meanings and requirements that must be understood at the outset when building a global compensation strategy. First, the minimum wage and the federal minimum wage is in effect in the US. And many states like California also have state minimum wage requirements that are higher than the federal minimum wage. So like this, they will be having their own the practices that need to be followed. Like this, in different countries, we can have the different, or we do see the different HR practices with respect to compensation in these countries. Now, let us understand what are the emerging issues in compensation management. The emerging issues are, the first one is designing, planning, and managing compensation on a global basis. And the second one is finding a data privacy strategy that best meets the organizational needs. And the third one is accommodating to local cultures. The fourth one is managing environmental pay issues in another area for concern for organizations that operate globally. Now let us understand the global legal and regulatory context of M&E. A multinational corporation or multinational enterprise is an organization that owns or controls production of goods or services in one or more countries other than their home country. It can also be referred as an international corporation, a transnational corporation, or a stateless corporation. Means this multinational corporation is usually a large corporation which produces or sells goods or services in various countries, like importing and exporting goods and services, making significant investment in a foreign country, buying and selling licenses in foreign markets, engaging in contract manufacturing, and opening manufacturing facilities or assembly. So this is about the compensation practices of the expatriates, and here while doing so, certain the labor standards and ethics also need to be followed, and an international industrial relation also comes into picture. So these also need to be looked into. The concepts have been derived from the recommended and the prescribed textbooks given by the university, and the same has been represented in the table.